This episode of Marijuana Today Daily is sponsored by Phyto Partners, a venture capital fund that invests in businesses operating in and around the ever-growing and dynamic legal cannabis industry. With investments in companies like TradeDiv, Seed, Baker, Leaf, and Steep Hill, you know Phyto Partners have their fingers on the pulse of legal cannabis. If you're an accredited investor with at least $500,000 to invest in a diversified cannabis-focused fund, then you need to open up phytopartners.com to learn more about their team and their approach to investing. That's spelled P-H-Y-T-O, partners.com. Good morning, Marijuana Nation. It's Tuesday, June 13th, 2017, and you're tuned in to episode 267 of Marijuana Today Daily. I'm your host, Shay Gunther, and I'll be walking you through today's marijuana news and headlines. As always, we have a full and busy day of cannabis news in our hands, so let's jump right into it. Our top story of the day is an exclusive piece by my buddy Tom Angel over at MassRoots, who was given a copy of a letter by an unnamed congressional staffer that Attorney General Jeff Sessions wrote to members of Congress asking that they not renew legislative language protecting the legal medical marijuana industry from federal prosecution and harassment. Regular listeners should be well familiar with the Rohrabacher-Farr/Blumenauer amendment that prevents the Department of Justice from spending money going after state legal medical marijuana patients and providers. That's the language targeted by Sessions' request. In the letter obtained by Tom, Attorney General Sessions wrote, quote, "I believe it would be unwise for Congress to restrict the discretion of the department to fund particular prosecutions, particularly in the midst of a historic drug epidemic and potentially long-term uptick in violent crime. The department must be in a position to use all laws available to combat the transnational drug organizations and dangerous drug traffickers who threaten American lives." Unquote. I wonder how you say that in Russian. Today must be Tom Angel Day because he has the second story of the day as well as the first, with his piece on a potential compromise in Vermont that could lead to the passage of some form of legal adult use marijuana. This is another story we've all been following for the last few months as the Vermont legislature has, at various points, killed and then resurrected the chances for adult use marijuana reform. Last month, Governor Phil Scott vetoed a measure that made its way through both the State House and Senate, but in doing so, he laid out a number of changes that would have to be made for him to reconsider. As Tom is reporting, it looks like the state legislators have taken him up on that advice and sent over a newly revised bill for his consideration. Yesterday came good news in the form of a quote made by a spokeswoman for the governor who said that Governor Scott was, quote, "encouraged to get a good counterproposal," unquote. Click over to Tom's piece on MassRoots for the full read on this one. As always, we have all the news we cover linked to on our website at mjtodaydaily.com and on our Twitter account at mjtodaydaily. Our final top story of the day brings us out west to California, where Governor Jerry Brown and state lawmakers released yesterday a set of proposed budget bills, one that would allow medical marijuana dispensaries to sell to adult use customers. Nate Bradley, executive director of the California Cannabis Industry Association, said that allowing dispensaries to sell to both segments of the cannabis buying population would cut down on the number of dispensaries any given market needs by half, which reduces in kind the amount of money the state needs to spend to regulate and monitor things. Legal adult use sales in California will officially come online sometime next year, with licenses to be first given out in January. Those are our top stories for today. It's time for Marijuana Today Daily Headlines Blitz. Before we blitz out on headlines, let's quickly thank our sponsor, phytopartners.com, the venture capital fund that is capitalizing America's next great industry. With the legal marijuana industry growing gangbusters every year, it's becoming increasingly more challenging to weed out the bad investment opportunities from the good, just because there's so many. That's why it's a great idea to find professionals like the folks at Phyto Partners who can do all the evaluating and due diligence legwork for you. If you're an accredited investor with a minimum of $500,000 to invest, you need to learn more about Phyto Partners and what they can do for you. Just open up phytopartners.com to get started. That's spelled P-H-Y-T-O partners.com. P-H-Y-T-O partners.com. All right, time for the blitz. A big deal was just announced in New York State with Ianthus Capital Holdings announcing their acquisition of Valley Agriceuticals, one of New York State's 10 licensed medical marijuana providers. Valley Agroceuticals is one of the lucky 5 license winners who were most recently given official sanction to grow and sell medical marijuana, with the first 5 chosen having spent the last couple of years burning millions of dollars operating in a market with a relative handful of patients. The overall deal gives Ianthus Capital 100% of Valley Agroceuticals for $2.3 million in cash and $15 million in Ianthus stock. State legislators in Massachusetts are expecting to vote on Thursday on an adult use marijuana bill that would set the tax rate for sales, change up the oversight structure of government control of the industry, and pull back some of the power given to towns and cities over the issuing of marijuana business licenses. This is a good one to click over for the full read if you're into Bay State cannabis news. Marijuana Business Daily's chart of the week shows the projected rise in the overall size of the national legal marijuana market, including both its direct impact as well as the broader economic impact from dispensary and store sales. In 2021, MJ Biz Daily is projecting that the direct sales of legal marijuana will be well worth over $10 billion, with an indirect additional economic impact of $35 to $60 billion. The San Francisco Chronicle has a good story up about drug-sniffing dogs in California. While I think most of us can admit to having had some negative feelings towards police officers at one point in our lives, it's harder to feel the same resentment towards police dogs, who are really only trying to be good girls and boys, even when they're misdirected by their bad handlers. The Chronicle's story talks about some of the work marijuana sniffing dogs are doing these days in the face of a declining war on marijuana consumers. My buddy Johnny Green over at Weed News is reporting that the New Jersey branch of the Drug Policy Alliance is launching a new campaign to push for legal adult use marijuana in that state, and is doing so with a great video highlighting some of the racial injustices carried out in the name of the war on drugs. Take some time today to click over to Johnny's story for the full read and to watch the DPA's video. Yesterday, the city of Denver announced that they would be cracking down on legal marijuana facilities who have not yet filed their plans for odor control. The city's environmental health department announced yesterday that around 20% of all licensed marijuana facilities were in danger of being fined for lagging on filing their odor control plans, which were officially due 4 months ago. And finally for today, Leafly has the story of a scorned would-be marijuana industry gambler. Isaac Dietrich, CEO of Colorado-based marijuana social media network MassRoots, has reportedly been banned from the Wynn and Encore Casino in Las Vegas because he works in the legal marijuana industry. Mr. Dietrich was informed of his banning after he signed up for one of the casino's rewards programs and was told that it was explicitly because of his work at MassRoots. In response to an email from Mr. Dietrich inquiring about the banning, Wynn Resorts compliance officer Larry Whelan wrote, quote, "If I recall correctly, the customer due diligence procedures required by the Wynn Las Vegas compliance program identified your business as a marijuana-related entity that derives its income from marijuana businesses. Unfortunately, this puts your source of wealth in the marijuana field, as your business is being paid with proceeds from the sale of marijuana." Unquote. Mr. Whelan went on to say, quote, "The state versus federal debate will continue at a much higher level than this email. Until that debate is clearly resolved with respect to the Bank Secrecy Act, the Wynn Las Vegas leadership team has chosen to take the more conservative approach." Unquote. Those are the headlines and news for the day. I'll be back with you again tomorrow morning with another information-packed episode of Marijuana Today Daily. But in the meantime, if you have any stories to share or feedback to give, zip us an email to headlines@mjtodaydaily.com. And while you're clicking around the interwebs, swing over to our Twitter account at MJTodayDaily and visit our website at mjtodaydaily.com to find links to all the news we cover. Thanks to our sponsor, Phyto Partners, and to all of our awesome Patreon listeners for the support that makes this show possible. To join the illustrious ranks of the Patreon listeners yourself, swing over to our website at mjtodaydaily.com and click on that big blue button at the top of the page that says Become a Patron. I'm your host, Shay Gunther. Thanks for tuning in and starting your day with Marijuana Today.
One take, Shay. One take.